Well, hey crew, thanks for tuning in with us. We're excited to get started, and we'll have more folks trickle in as we get going. Just wanted to spend the time and talk about integrated expertise today. Really what that is, whether you call it fractional, whether you call it outsourcing. We think about that as a lot more highly involved in 2023 than maybe what we've come to know thus far. So hopefully this is educational. We do have one rule. It's that there's no rules. Ask questions. We want to stop. We want to answer it. We want to make sure this is an enriching experience to you all. So 1 second here. Okay, I think we're good to rock. So just want to double check on one thing and let's get started. So want to introduce Diana and Scott with me as well. Diana, do you want to give a quick introduction of you and your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So for everyone that's joined us and people who might watch this recording, I'm Diana Cabrices. I'm the founder of my own company, Diana Cabrices Consulting, where I help wealth tech brands go to market and amplify their story, create engaging content, whether it's for their prospects or for their clients, with the end goal of building brand loyalty, trust with your brand, and brand affinity. I've been in the space for about 7 years, working with financial advisors through the tech lens. And I've gotten to work with different types of tech companies, whether they're focused on marketing and branding for financial advisors, or they're focused on other aspects of their business like succession planning, mergers and acquisitions, recruiting. It's given me a well-rounded lens of the financial advisor practice. So a lot of the times when I'm out speaking, I'm speaking to financial advisors, but also giving advice that's helpful for the tech companies that serve them. And I'm so excited to be here today. Jud, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, glad you're here. All right, Scott, you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure. Scott Klaassen with Milemarker. Man, I've been in this space probably the better part of 25 plus years. Have spent a number of years with Orion. Was actually with Orion before Orion was Orion. Walked through a lot of different roles. I think within that firm, I've also here, I'll say the last several years have worked with a couple different RIA firms. So I think who have all been users of Orion. So kind of have a little bit of a unique perspective of what things look like, maybe from portfolio accounting systems, from their point of view, but then also from the point of view of, hey, I'm an RIA. We're using the system, and the different ways and things that you can, how to leverage the system. So yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity with Jud and Milemarker and kind of what we're doing there of helping folks to be able to leverage their technology.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. I'm Jud. Actually, I have Scott to thank for being in the financial services industry. I got my first job at Orion because of Scott's referral. So it's super fun to get to be working together now, helping serve advisors, helping them, move forward. And really for me, I've done a number of things throughout my career, but really when I sat back and looked, I'm like, what do I want the second half of my career to be? I really want to connect this industry. I want to connect the future of financial advice. It's way too broken. It's way too disparate. That doesn't mean it needs to be consolidated in like a conglomerate and terribly corporate. We know that's bad. We want independent firms to be independently successful and to do things on their own terms. And that's why Milemarker exists. That's why I do all these different things in the industry. And I think that's why all three of us are here on this webinar today. So I'm going to turn it over to Diana. Here's our really quick rundown, not to be too formal, but here's what we're going to go through. We're going to talk about fractional future. We're going to talk about building a brand with Diana. I don't think we can get a better expert on that. I'm going to talk about marketing and experience I've had there. And then Scott's going to talk about, marketing is great, but operations is always the big focus. I can't market because I'm too busy in the back office. Like there's that real pull that firms have. And so that's why we have everybody together on this call today. And we'll talk about kind of what's next in our series. So why fractional is a future? We really think that it's not necessarily outsourcing. You're already implementing, you're just not implementing it with experts. You may be finding people that do things regionally, or you've you've worked with somebody that aspires to be an expert, but doesn't necessarily know you that well, doesn't know your clients that well, can't really have sat in your seat or on the same side of the table as you. We really think the future is working with people that have done that. We had the big change from COVID and all these sorts of things, and some places are going back to where they were, sadly. But Schwab's a great example. Schwab decided, hey, everybody's back in the office, and then they turn around and then a few months later, they're shutting down 5 offices because they looked at the numbers, they looked at their employee happiness, and they looked at their leases, and they're like, hey, I think we can do this differently. And a lot of firms now, I was talking to Matt Sonnen last Thursday or Friday, and he's working in LA. His firm's in the Northwest. Firms are more and more remote, and this is creating a lot more opportunities to really integrate in the right experts for all this stuff. So firms also decided to get leaner, and in getting lean, maybe you don't need a full-time employee. Maybe you need the right full-time or part-time expert to really help guide you forward. So a lot of really interesting things happening now. And the worst thing that we can do is not change, is to sit still and think everything's going to just be back the way it was. This is an amazing opportunity to get better and to change and improve our businesses. And so this model has been proven. I mean, advisors have been using outsourced parties, whether it's for investment management or compliance or even IT. These things are really common. Here's an opportunity to think about this through different areas of your business. And we'll talk about it at the end, but Brian Portnoy is coming up on the next one of these with his Fractional Chief Behavioral Officer offer. And that's changing the landscape. You're thinking about this. When I was at Carson, we would do a lot of things for firms, and we would be on the websites of all these different firms, but we are effectively kind of an outsourced or fractional version of what they need, but it also fills out the org chart they need. So, Diana, I'm going to hand it to you on building a brand, and I'll ask you to walk through. I'll navigate it. So just tell me, Jud, next slide, and I'll do that.
That sounds great. The more you want to navigate, the better. Yeah, I'd love to jump in. And I know the folks who have joined us are interested in hearing, the brand building aspects, but also where that fractional piece kind of comes in. So I think if you want to go to the next slide, let's tackle that first big question. This is a question that we're hearing asked a lot in the industry. I've been asked it a million times, and I want to shed some light on it. So this applies to whether you're a technology company or whether you're a financial services firm. It's the same application here when it comes to your brand. Should you build a brand around a person or a company? So let's talk about the company brand, right? I kind of think of this as like a company-centric branding approach. That is, the identity of your company, your offer, your value, your unique selling proposition, what makes your company. And that's important, right? We know you need to establish that. You want to have sustainability in your brand. And when you focus on the brand itself, you can sell your company one day and you still have that identity. It's also creating a consistent brand identity for other people. When they engage with your brand, they feel that identity wherever they go. I think the con of that is it's faceless, right? In many cases, a company brand is a logo and it is a product and it is your value prop, but there's not necessarily the people wrapped around that. That's where you start to get more into the people branding, the personal branding. So a corporate brand I would consider as the foundation to your branding, but it is not enough in and of itself. So when you think about the people aspect, you help kind of overcome some of those challenges with just having a corporate brand being impersonal, being faceless, being different, hard to differentiate as well, right? Especially if you're selling the same kind of product as a competitor, or you're offering the same service, retirement planning, and there's 10 other retirement planners in the area. The company brand is simply not enough to have. So now you extend into the people-centric area of your brand. And this is where I start to use the terminology a lot around humanizing your brand. So there's so much data out there around the importance of putting faces on your brand. It creates more loyalty with customers. It creates more trust with customers. Clients are more likely to refer you to a friend or family member if they have more of that people to people human experience. And we know people buy from people. So thinking about who are your, biggest thought leaders in your company? Who's close to your customer? And can we put them front and center with different content, with storytelling, with getting more personal online? The best brands, in my opinion, they're doing a combination of both. It's not just one or the other. You choose and you run with it. It truly is both. And that's we're gonna see more and more of that happening in the marketplace for sure. From a fractional lens, Jud, I will just say where a lot of companies struggle is on that people-centric branding. I don't have time to be out there. We're all operating the business. We're, servicing our customers. We're building the product. We don't have a lot of time to go out there and do that brand building. Well, now there are fractional brand builders in this space. And I launched my company in January. And since then, there's been a lot of people who have said, hey, I really want to launch something similar. And I know on the other side, the market really needs this. And we're seeing a lot of that pick up right now.
Yeah. I kind of wished it was one or the other, right? The answer is
I know it's hard.
It's just like, oh, brother. Oh, man.
Yep. Yeah.
So what's a good brand in 2023?
So great question. There's a lot of different things and directions that I could take this answer to. But again, a combination of both company and people is going to be important. But there's a few other things that are happening right now in this space where you can really get to see what is making that great brand. I think number one, first and foremost, a great brand is obsessing over the customer. So, we've kind of shifted a bit, right? We've looked at prospecting and go to market, and that's super important. But now we know it's about the life cycle of the customer, and we want them forever, right? We want these forever clients. I was on a webinar the other week with Wealthbox and Snappy Kraken. We were talking about forever clients for financial advisors. And it's about creating experiences, but also content, not just for reaching new people and letting them know you exist, but also to create great experiences for your clients. And really, Jud, what that all turns to is consistency. So that's the second thing I'd say. Great brands, they are consistent. If you think about brands that you love and that I love, right? When you think about the nature of the relationship you have, you almost always can expect to have a great experience. They're not dropping balls very often. It doesn't matter if you're talking to the advisor or you're talking to the client service team, everyone gives you that same positive experience and you can expect it every single time. I think the other part of this too is just understanding that digital is everything and good brands are going to have a good digital presence. So whether that's on social media, you have a newsletter, you have your website, it's something that you're doing ongoing. And it's not a one and done thing, right? Creating a great brand, like a reputation, it takes time. You're planting those seeds. It could be ruined quickly if you're not careful, if you're not intentional, especially when you're thinking about who you're placing on those front lines. You want to be able to trust in them. But I would say the majority of companies, they need to have a great presence online. And the ones that are building these great brands are doing that. And maybe they're even kind of forming some sort of media component to their business. We're seeing SaaS companies that are now sort of converting into media companies. And you ask yourself why, and it all stems back to some of what I've been saying. You have to humanize your brand. You have to get out there. You have to create content and experiences. It's not enough to just have the website anymore.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Yeah.
What are the mistakes that firms are making today when it comes to building a brand? If I'm running a RIA or something like that, where am I really falling short when it comes to building a brand today?
Mm-hmm. With this question, I want to start by saying what one firm's mistakes are might not necessarily be another firm's mistake, right? Every firm is a bit different. However, generally speaking, there are things that we should be paying attention to when it comes to what you really shouldn't be doing or what you should be doing with your brand. When I think about advisors, I think about how many right now are not focused on brand longevity. So, for example, if you work with retirees and that is your focus and everything you do is focused on your clients, but you're not extending that to that next generation, well, you're already behind, right? We know the great wealth transfer is happening. It will continue to happen. So I think advisors that aren't focusing on that are really missing out, and they should start focusing on that, right? do events that bring in the next generation, host educational webinars on things that their children are, what's important to them, what they're focusing on. And again, like all the more reason to even hire some sort of outsourced or in-house, whatever works for you, but younger branding experts that can help you millennialize and, next gen your business in a way. I would say the other thing is I'll go back to actually, I want to take it to technology, because I think you, Jud, and you as well, Scott, would really appreciate this. Technology is speeding up really, really quickly, and firms are adopting technology very quickly. But if their technology is not serving them properly, so instead it's making things more complicated, or it's not integrated, things aren't speaking to one another. Well, the purpose of technology is to help you deliver a better service. It's also to help you operationalize, but in turn, that helps you deliver a better service. So if your technology is wonky and that's not serving you well, and data's everywhere, and you're not making the right informed decisions, that is going to impact the end client. So to Milemarker, you guys are doing great things. That's exactly what this is all about, right? Outsourcing or finding support to integrate more of your technology together so you can provide that better service. I'll say one last thing here, because this one is really important: failure to differentiate. So mistakes that I'm seeing are with advisors not getting specific enough. And I know there's this big argument over, should you niche down or should you not? And some people say niche and some people say niche. But the matter of the fact is people are searching more specifically than ever. And it's not enough to just say we serve everyone. That's a total loss of differentiation. You should get more specific. I think the best brands are growing quickly and they're earning trust across their customer bases because they have this ultra specific knowledge that they know about their customers, their wants, their needs, their desires, what's specific to them. So I think differentiating is a big thing to consider for advisors and for tech companies.
Yeah, that's great. So Diana, when should you consider hiring a fractional brand evangelist?
Yes, I love this question because I want to talk all about this. It's clearly what I'm most passionate about, having launched a fractional chief evangelist business. Some people still don't really understand what the heck that means. It's essentially an ambassador for your company, right? Somebody who's passionate about your product and your service and your culture, and they want to go out in the marketplace and shout it over the rooftops because they know in doing so, that's going to help a lot of people. In my case, it's going to help a lot of advisors when I team up with technology that I think is cutting edge, that is well integrated with other tools in their tech stack, and that's really helping them deliver that better service for their clients. If you go to the next slide, Jud, I actually put this slide in here. This is, if you've heard of the book Crossing the Chasm by Jeffrey Moore, he talks about the different stages of companies. And what you're seeing here, it's very specific to a technology company, but it can apply to financial services firms as well. You have a starting phase, you're growing, and then you're just kind of in this place where your service is really whole, everything's really tight, but now you have a different focus. So depending on which stage you're in, you can ask yourself, what would having someone on, out in the field or on the front lines, whether it's at conferences, whether it's doing events in your community, if you're an advisor, what would that do to my business? How would that impact it? Well, it's going to depend on what stage business that you're in. So when you're asking, when should you hire? Well, looking at early market, right on this screen here, you can see in early market, if you're launching something, you want to definitely create a lot of awareness. You want to test positioning, and you want to win over some early adopters of your product or your service. So having someone go out there and create, content that's SEO optimized, that's going to answer some of those frequently asked questions, giving you a feedback loop. Hey, this is what I'm really hearing. This is what's sticking. Maybe we should kind of shift our own positioning. Maybe we think about niching down because I'm finding a lot more of this particular type of people wanting our help. You're interviewing early adopters, early clients, and getting their feedback, which is going to help you create more content and go out and drive more awareness. As you start to move into like mainstream market, you can see the need for demand gen, for establishing deeper industry roots is growing, but also as competitors pop up in this space, building more customer loyalty, more customer advocacy. And that's important too. And an evangelist can really help with that, right? Making sure you're always engaging your customers. You as the advisor, you as a tech CEO, or whichever one that you might identify with, you can't always be doing all of those things on your own. Webinars, right? They're a lot. Jud, I know you know this, the podcast, it's a lot to manage on your own. So I would say the answer to that is depending on where you are, what your goals are, and what you want. But you will start to see more and more fractional options for brand builders out in that space, because it takes a team. It's not just one person. It takes the company, but sometimes the company's really busy doing the operational work. So having someone there outsourced that you can trust is a really great option.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, it's so important. And, so often I think you're torn as a founder, like to the time to work down and in and then up and out. But up and out stuff, as soon as you can get to the place of doing that, or having somebody that's making sure that's happening really well, or even like hiring somebody like you just to learn, if nothing else, just to learn how this works. What does the industry even look like? And how can I be, when we get to late majority or early majority, like how are we going to be living every day as a company, I think is really, really important. So thank you for that. And I'm going to talk marketing still, so please chime in.
Yeah.
Diana,
Okay.
Has a ton of experience here. And so creating effective marketing content is something that I've kind of come to start doing because, honestly, I got started in this industry coming out of creative arts. Like I was in the kid in student government that loved to make the band posters and just stuff like that. I love it. I love to make content and design stuff. It just so happens that doesn't pay the bills until you're like a professional musician or something like that. Real quick, here's my background. I've been around for a long time. I got my start in 2004, thanks to Scott Klaassen, who's on this call. Done a bunch of stuff, applied for a bunch of awards, won them, all that fun stuff that people can do. But we started Milemarker in 2021 to really start to streamline all the back-end infrastructure for these firms, because ultimately I want great companies that can be marketed, that can have a brand evangelist, that have all this stuff taken care of, but they have to have something uniquely scalable and centralized so they can actually start to focus on that sort of stuff. And we're doing the same thing with our Mammoth company with alternatives uniquely. There's a lot of problems there that we have to connect. And so a big part of that is to get those things operationally sound with the right partners, and then to start to elevate that whole identity through a brand. So for me, the most effective channel for advisors today is always an interesting question. I'm going to turn to our good friend in the blue shirt, Michael Kitces. And his study is excellent. He does such a good job. Like I looked at this, I'm like, I'm just going to copy all of his stuff here because it's a really good study. I'm not that geeky about these details, but like in terms of there's a ton of strategies advisors are using today. And it's a mixed bag of what is working, what's not, and people try things on for a while and then they realize that's not me. And it's interesting. Tools like Snappy Kraken have had a ton of success because this industry really needs somebody that's very specific and understands what consumers really need and understands how to articulate that uniquely at scale for advisors. But that's one part of it. Real success in marketing and brand is very omni-channel, and that requires all of us to be thinking about that holistically. If we look at the client aggregation acquisition cost, the CAC for all these things, you can see that SEO is the lowest cost, but it's going to take the longest time. And now with all the AI stuff, it's getting harder because it's easier to create content. So all your folks can like create the same high ranking keyword, but it's not going to rank as high anymore. Books and things like that people, 20 years ago used to do. It's going to build authority and brand, but it's going to cost. The ROI is going to be lower. Paid marketing, all these sorts of things. There's all kinds of things in here. And I'm curious what people have tried, where you've had the most success. There's always advisors out there like, hey, we've had a radio show for 35 years. We spend a lot of money on it, but it's where all our clients came from. That's great. Yep. That's very common. And that's good. I just think that there's good opportunities now to take that and say, well, how do we expand that into the digital form for the fact that most people aren't listening to radio anymore. They're listening to a podcast on Saturday morning instead. So looking at this here, I'm going to move my screen so I don't block my view, but revenue generated by marketing strategy. So COIs are number one. So people that are not into referrals or feel like referrals aren't the thing, keep going. It matters. Spend the time. Client events, spend the time, make it awesome, make it Instagrammable, make it memorable, make it unique and not boring. Like, do stuff that's totally different and stop just doing it yourself. Listen to your team, especially the folks that are like, that really know your clients. Like, make things awesome. Invest in your brochures, all these sorts of things. Like, it matters. But all of it matters. And that's the unique problem, I think, that we face here in scaling all of this stuff. Years ago, I had a company called Mineral. And when I spun out of Orion, we started this and we served a large number of asset managers, and we did Orion's marketing for like 3 or 4 years after that as well. But we served a lot of RIAs, and it was a joy to serve them, and also the hardest thing ever to serve them, because so much of what we were asked to do was to represent them in content marketing. And I have this guy, his name's Dale. He's a wonderful guy. But man, I felt like I had to sell Dale all the time on the value of what we're doing, because we would get close to nailing his persona in written word. But man, it was really difficult to always properly represent him. We worked hard. I don't know if we made any money on the client, but we worked really, really hard to nail that. And when I left, when we sold the business to Carson, I still have him in the back of my mind. I'm like, how do I help people like Dale do what they need to do with content marketing? What does that look like? I went to Carson. I had a team of 32 people doing all this marketing. It's a massive team. Most people don't invest like that. It's really tremendous to be able to have all these resources at our disposal, all these folks that really care and that can be led and do what they do really, really well. But that's not the normal firm. And that's not the normal, even from a fintech standpoint or a B2B to C sort of advisor platform that we serve a lot at Milemarker. It's not normal to have that kind of investment. So, I'm sitting here, thinking about like, what are the most successful things that people have outsourced? It's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag of what people have done around that. And so this is how I think about how advisors should go about evaluating their marketing today. Just asking 6 core questions, asking who are your ideal clients? What do your ideal clients actually enjoy? And how do your ideal clients consume content? All of these things change a little bit. And it's really important to understand that, because if you don't get this stuff, all that list of stuff is going to be static. It's not going to necessarily be hitting. And then the lower is to think about, what do you care about? What are you an expert at? And where do you have this inspired time? Like, where are you like really being injected with creativity? Because if you align those 3 things together in this sort of Venn diagram for yourself and do the same thing for your client, that's where the magic happens. That's where you can be authentically yourself. You can then take that and transcend that into a brand that's going to feel a lot more effortless. And then as you hire folks, it's going to be like, look, this is who we are. This is who we serve. And it's very easy to nail down. But if you're going to start wanting to be the #1 authority on backdoor Roths, well, Betterment's going to kick your butt every day, because they have the right people. And so this goes into the mistakes that I see advisors making with marketing, is like, they're not getting the fact that like, you have to become a media company, also a technology company. You have to embrace these things for this next chapter. And I know that doesn't feel good sometimes when you're trying to just embrace, I want to be a good wealth management firm. But I think if we can start to put that lens on and look at things and understand, like, I am a media company, even if I'm not a very good media company. And how do I get better at that? How do I get better at broadcasting and building a brand? I'm also a technology company, because maybe I just pay for a lot of it right now and it's sort of connected, but like, what if it got better? What if it like really, really improved? Well, that would change things. And if you think about this as an investor in your firm, a business owner, you think about the valuation of your company. When you go from being like a pay for your time sort of business model, where people are, paying you to buy your clients, with the average, annuitization on your clients' lifetime value being X, but you then add a layer of brand and unique technology on that, it transcends your value. I work with a lot of private equity companies, and that's a very big thing in how deals get evaluated and companies get valued. So just as an aside. Anything to add on that, Diana or Scott?
Oh man, I had a million things in my head because you said so much good stuff. And I really like this article clip here because it's true. It's exactly what I was saying earlier, right? Like it's all about the media now. And that is what's getting attention online. And I loved maybe it was the last slide, but the little boxes that you have. And one of them was about where are you like feeling most inspired? I really like this because not everything is going to nourish you as an advisor. You might not be nourished with creating that video, or, you might not be nourished with writing a newsletter, but find what does nourish you and which time of the day. So for me personally, mornings are my creative time. If I'm, 6 to 9, I can do a lot of great content. The rest of the day, forget it. So it's really just about figuring that piece out as well. Like where and when can you do your best work? And then to the point of you having a 30-person marketing team, that is just a dream that most companies have, but cannot achieve. Like even companies that have been around for 5-10 years can't even get to that. And most of the time, marketing is like the most slim budget for a lot of companies. We're starting to see that shift, thankfully, I think across marketing and client service, customer success. But that is exactly why you're seeing so many more fractional marketing experts, because marketing in and of itself is very fractional, right? There are so many little pieces. There's SEO, there's paid ads, there's the website, there's design. And I know we've got FinArt on the line who does fractional design, right? It's a lot to put together as a business owner and run through your company. So just kind of cherry picking these experts, bringing them together, and just really paying them for the time and the expertise you need in that moment. I mean, that's a no-brainer for a lot of companies when it comes to marketing. So all great points, Jud.
It's been a bit, but I don't know if anybody remembers the Lego movie. And I'm going to spoil the Lego movie because at the end, I think the Emmett, the main character, I have 4 kids, so I've seen and heard the Lego movie a million times. But like the idea is that at the end of the day, it's about being the special. And it turns out that Emmett, this plain kind of character, is the special. This is the thing I've learned in serving advisors for nearly 20 years, is that as much as I try as the fractional guide or the person you hire to work inside your firm, you as the founder or the person that owns the brand are the special, because no one will love or care about your clients more than you.
Right.
No one, and you have to, like, this is the thing, you have to bottle that. Like you have to make that scalable. And so as I left Carson, and now as we were doing this stuff at Carson, I had this thing in my mind. So Gary Vee, like him or love him, he's done a very good job and he really understands where things are going. Years ago, this is 2019, with the 64 pieces of content a day idea. One idea, 64 different ways. And I looked at this and I looked at this and I looked at my compliance and I looked at my workflows and I'm like, how the heck? That could be amazing, but how do you do it? And so I sat back and I look at this and I have a friend, his name's Adam Clark. So Adam's just an amazing producer. He creates content. He's worked with a bunch of big shows. He's worked with Alec Baldwin, Sophia Bush, and a bunch of other people. He's like Grammy nominated. He just loves the details. I said, Adam, what if we could take one idea and splice it up a million different ways? How can we do that? Because this industry needs it. Because people aren't going to just go to your constant contact newsletter all the time. They might, some of them might, but your open rates are telling a different story, right? Your social media followers are telling a different story. And it's not just one of those channels or one of those things on that grid that Michael put together. It's kind of all of them. And so how do we start to talk about all this stuff? So this is how marketing works in Milemarker. And Adam has a whole company called Turncast. I'm a partner in it. I believe in it. I think this is what everybody should be doing. You should hire Diana. You should hire Turncast. You should hire Scott. But like, I'm a big fan of everybody because I want this industry to connect and to move forward. So here's how Milemarker's marketing works today. So we have an idea. We have an expert, and then we have the execution. And so we partner with the Turncast company to do all this stuff. They do shows for LifeYield, Orion, a bunch of other folks to make all this stuff scale. Here's how it works practically for us. So have this. This is us with Matt Sonnen on Friday or Thursday, I think. We're talking to Matt, hearing all about his story, talking about Jack Black and Van Halen. We had a great time. That episode is going to come out here in a couple of weeks. And then we take that episode, goes through the whole editorial process. That becomes a video clip. So we have that, becomes a podcast episode. on all the major Spotify's and YouTube's and Google's and all the places you get a podcast. You get an episode. You get an email newsletter in your inbox every Tuesday. It goes live every Tuesday morning consistently. We get social media content. We get Shannon, showing up in your social media feeds. We have now a newsletter on LinkedIn using LinkedIn's native newsletter features, which are performing better than if I just post a link. And I put it on a website. It goes to the website automatically through an RSS feed. I just go and kind of clean it up a little bit because RSS feeds are kind of gunky. But it's all there. And then it goes out on our connected newsletter on Fridays. Every Friday morning, we send that out as well. So that's one 30-minute, 45-minute time because we hung out and talked for a little longer. We record it. It gets edited. It goes through Matt's, in this instance, goes through Matt's compliance at Coldstream. They review it. He had that compliance stuff about 2 hours later. The whole transcript, everything they need to scrub out because it isn't what they want to have. And then it's back to us on the editing side, and then it's published a few days later. So that to me is an attempt at the 64 pieces, but it's what everybody needs to be doing at scale. And for me as the business owner and the founder, I'm only giving up 30 minutes of my time on a regular to do these interviews. And I get to ask questions like I would if I was having coffee with Matt. We have a simple script. There's 4 questions we try to ask each time. I'll share those with you if you want, but it makes for a good show, and it makes content that Matt or the guest or whoever is going to be proud to share as well. And to me, that's how brands build. And we recently just launched a show, but it's been amazing for us to have that for us. I mean, these are all the different places. So we record it in Riverside, and then all the different social media places that are getting a published version of this in some way. So they're seeing Milemarker, they're seeing our connected brand all in these one place, all these different places at scale each week. And it's remarkable for us. I totally recommend it for everybody else. And, this is our fractional team. This is Adam, Ashley, David, and Amy, and they make it all happen each week. And they're a part of our team, but they're not. And like we can go in and engage and turn down the volume on how much we want. And it's been a huge differentiator for us and a bunch of other companies. So hopefully there's some parallels for that for you and whatever that looks like in your own experience as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott. I'm going to grill Scott with a bunch of questions on scaling operations, because here's the thing about Scott. He's quiet. But he has worked behind the scenes to help really quality firms grow and scale to hundreds of advisors in some cases, to working inside the custodians, dealing with things, to working in Orion and helping us really build that company forward. He's had a wide breadth of experience that is great to hear from. So Scott, operations is the central nervous system of a firm, my firm, your firm on the line here, but I can't seem to find scale in my operations. We've often seen this a lot of times with folks that don't want to come back into the office, or they want to go change and do something totally different in their life. What are the choices that people are thinking about when it comes to trying to find scale in their operations, Scott?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're thinking of scale and, with the operations, your choices are kind of like, well, do I hire more people? Do I outsource this option? Or, for your need, what do you do? I think the difficulty that I've seen, especially, walking through a variety of different roles at different firms of, hey, I'm going to do this myself. I'm going to hire my own employees, which is great. And you think, hey, I've got better control that way. The difficulty is when they decide to, hey, they're going to seek other opportunities. In fact, at Charter, we're working with a client right now who is, it's like, look, we've walked through 6 different employees in this role, and it's such a difficult process when they decide to leave, and they take so much of that knowledge and experience with them that's impossible to try to document all of that for the next person. But so yeah, go back to, hey, my options are I'm going to hire somebody or I'm going to outsource. And, I've kind of talked a little bit about maybe some of the difficulty with doing it on your own. I think the difficulty with outsourcing is so often, it's like, okay, hey, great, I'm gonna outsource this, but I'm gonna give you this list of items that we need to have this stuff taken care of. and the outsourced firm may handle that just fine. Where we're trying to differentiate ourselves, I think, on the charter side is, yes, we are an outsourced solution, but we're also coming at this with a tremendous amount of experience, which Jud, we've already talked through a lot of that. Whether it's, your experience, my experience of working with Orion, working with at a custodian, at other RIAs. So we're trying to take that experience and look at it and say, okay, these are the things that here's what we're going to help you, but how can we help you be more efficient? What can we do to not only just take care of the, the XYZ items, but hey, where are some things we can see where you could be more efficient?
Yeah, the thing I've seen is a lot of times people are like, they'll call me or text me and say, Jud, I need an Orion expert. I need a Salesforce expert. I need a red tail expert. I'm like, okay, I can find you that person. Or I can help you not be in the place of thinking you need the expert for a triage situation. A lot of times people come and start outsourcing to triage a situation, but I think the thing that's interesting about fractional is it's not about triage. And yes, all three of us can triage this stuff, but what we want to do is transform it. So you're not thinking about things like, how do I figure out a specific point in time? The simple thing is like, you should have processes in place that transcend, because what happens when that person simply just wants to go on vacation or gets hurt riding a motorcycle over the weekend? Like, we have to be more insulated around these things in our business. And we have to then think about it. How do I solve it one time and automate it if possible? Or how do we have the best practices going forward so we truly have scale? So Scott, next question. What are the major mistakes firms are making with their operations that you've seen?
Well, you just talked about it a little bit, I think, is being reactive versus proactive, with the data and information that you're working with. I've seen so many times over and over and over again, it's, and it's kind of like I'm answering the same question time and time again, or dealing with the same issue time and time again. Because, again, we're being reactive versus proactive. And by that, some of it, what I've seen is, not mapping out your processes and procedures fully. There may be, hey, I'm going to, you map out, maybe the first couple steps, but then, okay, well, what about all these other details that, everyone's just expecting to be there, and it's just not there. Yeah. And even with that, if we do have the processes and procedures mapped out, there is always the difficulty of maintaining it, because I have seen just kind of the assumption that, well, here's what's going to happen, and this data is going to come into the systems. And primarily I'm thinking of a portfolio accounting system, and obviously my experience has mostly been surrounded with Orion, but I don't think this is unique to Orion. It's probably with every portfolio accounting system. Is that, yeah, the data comes into the system, but there's got to be somebody on the back end that's maintaining it and watching it and have an understanding of, hey, great, this is the information that comes from the custodian, but what doesn't come from the custodian, and being, like I said, proactive to manage and maintain that information. Yeah,
that's great. All right, let's talk about shortcuts. Are there any unique shortcuts that firms can take to find scale in operations? Like, what are a lot of firms like overlooking that might be obvious, or is that even a thing?
I don't know so much about, I'll say, shortcuts. But what I would say, and it kind of goes back to what I was just talking about, of having that well-defined process and procedure of, hey, this is exactly how we're going to work with the information that we have, that we're getting, and this is how we want to, kind of tell our story, if as it were, with regards to, our clients' accounts. How is it you want that information to be presented, which, kind of is where the processes and procedures come from. But then also maintaining and having that consistent and routine maintenance of that information, of staying consistent with it. I've seen, a lot of situations where okay, well, most of the time, this is how we're going to deal with it, but everybody's always got an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
And I think limiting those exceptions to the rule is going to help you find the scale. And to a certain degree gives you the shortcut too, so that, I'm not having to deal with, 100 different variations of my standard rule.
Yeah. I mean, I think I've tried to find like the cheat code to get to the result faster. And I think more than, I don't, maybe probably more than most people, I've kind of come back to the same conclusion every time. It's like, do it right.
Yeah.
It takes more time. And it takes hiring an expert to really make that happen. Because I can try, but if I'm honest, I know it's not at all the quality that I really want to put out. So yeah, that's good, Scott. All right. I think we're getting close. So I feel like we are constantly maintaining our tech stack and nothing ever is working the way it should. What are my options with this sort of stuff?
The first thing I thought of when I looked at this question was, and I've dealt with this this exact question on multiple occasions. The first thing that I usually, would look at is like, okay, well, is the tech stack really not working the way it's supposed to, or is it just not working the way that you're expecting it to work? And from there is of getting an understanding of, okay, I understand what the expectation is, or the assumption of is like, hey, well, we're working with, whether it's whether it's all within one system or a system that, hey, that should be integrated, but truly having an understanding of, okay, how should this really work? And is that in line with kind of what your expectations are?
Yeah.
And I think, the second side of that too is, what are your options? Is, okay, well, if it's not working the way it should, and maybe even assuming that you do have a good understanding of what should be happening, do I need to throw more people at it? Do I need to hire more people? Do we need to outsource? And, kind of outsourcing, we've already talked about the pros and cons of that. And even kind of how Charter is looking at that as an outsourced solution. And I'll give you, an example of that is, so I just started working with a client. We walked through their first quarterly billing, and then they handed me this project. And I'm like, okay, Scott, hey, I want you to take a stab at working with the files that we need basically for billing. After the billing has taken place and after the fees have been pulled from the custodian, okay, now we have this series of reports that need to be submitted to our broker dealers. They're broken out by custodian, by as a field within Orion called business line that we did some sorting and grouping with. And anyway, at the end of the day, I spent the better part of my day trying to take the data that we have available and put that into a format that is what they needed to deliver to their broker dealer. And I was like, I probably spent the better part of 6 hours working through those spreadsheets. And I was like, no, you can't keep doing this. The data is all there. We have to be able to build a process or build something that can just take the data and with the push of a button, here it is. And so I think that's, again, where Charter is coming at the whole outsourcing solution a little bit from a different point of view, is that I'm trying to find ways to make this more efficient.
Yeah.
I don't want to just hand off this process. And even if we're the ones that are doing it, I don't want to just take this process and say, okay, now we got to take this data and, you're going to, in Excel, we're going to do these, sorting and grouping and VLOOKUPs to produce the end results that they want. It's like, no, I know from technology with the information we have, there's a way to provide that. And honestly, that scenario is not unique to this one particular client that we're working with. I've seen it over and over and over again, whether it was working with clients as an Orion employee or even within the RIAs I've been a part of. We all deal with it in a little bit of a unique way. So
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think the common denominator we've had throughout today's time is expertise. And you as the business owner, advisor, or the person that runs this area of the business are the expert there. but you cannot expect your expertise to scale. not to where it's all going. Like, at Milemarker, we don't believe you have to be a cloud expert. We don't believe you have to be a data expert. There's so many details in this stuff. I've spent 20 years in integration and data and all this stuff. Like, I know it pretty well, but it changes every second. And so we all have an opportunity as we grow and improve our businesses to leverage expertise to really uniquely solve and scale and automate aspects of your business, even if it's not automatable. But having that expert there that really does make it feel magic because they're so dang good at it. That is the art here. Working with the Diana, working with the Scott, really does transform that. So thank you so much for the time. If there are questions, please drop them in here. While you write a question in, if you have one, I'm going to give you a quick preview. Brian Portnoy is going to join us in August. We're going to talk asset management, scaling that in September with some of our friends, and then compliance, everybody's favorite, in October. Most important, often as the marketer, the most annoying. We're going to talk compliance. It's going to be fun. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. And Scott or Diana, anything else you wanted to share with the group?
I love this conversation, and I think we could go even deeper. And I'm excited for some of the upcoming guests that you have, especially Brian Portnoy. I know there's going to be a lot for him to share there around the outsourced chief behavioral officer. But I just want to touch on one quick thing that you said a moment ago, is that things are always changing, right? And so when you think about going out and looking for help, part-time, fractional, outsourced, however you want to position it, that's one of the biggest benefits, is we're keeping up with the trends and what is changing faster than you can probably get an entire marketing team to start changing all of their processes. So it's also just a great way to test some new perspective or new, creative thinking in your business without having to go all in. So ending on that note, I thought it was perfect, and I wanted to reiterate that. But Jud, thank you so much for having me, and Scott, it was a great conversation. I hope the audience finds this valuable. I'm sure they will.
Jud, thanks so much for having me on. And Diana,
Of course.
great meeting you.
You too.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
so much.
All right.